Cardiovascular section discussing valvular defects. First one here, mitral valve prolapse. This is essentially where a person, we understand the mitral valve, all valves are formed of like a elastic type, kind of cartilage type substance, a hard substance. There are some diseases such as Marfan syndrome or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome where this cartilaginous type material doesn't form properly. And in these instances, normally if we have here this is the heart, we have right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Between the left atrium and the left ventricle, there's a valve, and this valve is called the mitral valve. And so what we're talking about here is mitral valve prolapse. So the valve kind of clicks back on itself, kind of full balloons out like this. Normally it's supposed to hold really well, but in this case it's just like extra stretchy and not as hard and plastic as it's supposed to be. So it's ballooning of the mitral valve into the left atrium during systole. Now why is it during systole? Well, when is all the pressure happening in here? When the left ventricle squeezes down, the blood tries to go two places. It tries to go out through the aorta, and it also tries to go up here through the left atrium because it's just squeezing down on it. So this valve is holding, but it just, normally it's like this, but in this case it goes and kind of pops up like this and prolapses. So that's the prolapse of the mitral valve. So they call it a myxoid degeneration in the valve, which leads to a floppy valve. They don't know exactly the etiology. Marfan or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome seems to be associated with. It's associated with a mid-systolic click. Okay, why mid-systolic? Well, systolic is when the ventricle's contracting. So mid-systolic, though, because it has to generate enough pressure squeezing down for this thing to finally, I'll just try it here. So if it squeezes down, and when it gets to the point where this valve just can't take it anymore, and then finally it goes pop, and it pops up, makes a little clicking noise. And that is going to be that mid-systolic click. And you can get a regurgitation murmur with that, which is asymptomatic. Or could lead to a regurgitation murmur, asymptomatic possibly. Okay, so now mitral valve regurgitation. So in this instance, this is where we have a reflux of blood from the left ventricle, which goes to the left atrium again during systole. So that's when you're going to hear the sound. This is from a complication of mitral valve prolapse, or it could have a number of other causes as well. For example, like hypertrophy of the left ventricle can kind of cause it to grow. So normally there's a valve here. If it gets hypertrophied, it can like grow out, and then the valve can't quite reach anymore. That can happen. And you're going to hear a holosystolic blowing murmur. So remember, during systole, that's when this is occurring. It's louder with squatting and expiration. Why? Well, you're increasing the pressure, the pressure on the aorta, which means more of it's going to go back up through in the left atrium. And this results in volume overload, too much volume up here, and left heart failure. All right, now let's move over and talk about mitral stenosis for a minute. So mitral stenosis, I know you can't see the writing on there. I apologize. I'll just explain what it says. So mitral stenosis, in this case, this was from rheumatic fever. There is going to be an opening snap during, and then a diastolic rumble. So essentially, the valve is stenosed. So when it's supposed to be, the blood is supposed to be going through it, it's kind of tightened more. So it's supposed to go all the way, but it's kind of like narrowed, so like this, and then this can be from volume overload, this will happen with volume overload that leads to the dilation of the left atrium, as well as pulmonary congestion, where this pulmonary congestion leads to rupture of the alveoli, and then some blood gets in there, and macrophages go and try to eat it up, so they end up becoming hemosiderin-laden macrophages in there. That's one of the things you'll see with pulmonary congestion. And this also can lead to pulmonary hypertension, which can cause right heart failure, be associated with right heart failure. Remember, the whole thing's a circuit. and then atrial fibrillation, and this can be associated with mural thrombus. So basically, when the atria aren't contracting all the way, the blood just kind of gurgles in there and just sits around and kind of just stays there, and that basically is like a stasis. And when blood just sits for a while, it coagulates and hardens. And then when it hardens like that, you just got yourself a thrombus.